here after almost 30 minutes of technical difficulties. I am so
Yes.
excited to be here with Miranda Burton. We're going to give folks a little time to get situated, join us, since I know we're starting late, and we are sorry about that. Being in this virtual world, this technology fails us at times, and you can't really control it. But I think that, the people who are meant to see this will see this. We will
Yes.
have the replay available so you can share it with your friends, your colleagues, your family, because this is a very important subject. So we'll get started in just a couple minutes. But tell your people to join us. We are now live.
All right, all right.
And as folks are, sharing this live broadcast, I will go ahead and introduce myself and introduce Miranda, and just set the stage for why we are here. I am Life Coach Sharika Dunstan. I am the co founder and co owner of Family Strategist LLC. I own this organization with my husband, Chris. Hey, Chris, if you're listening. Um, and, we think it's really important to educate parents and empower families and so much more, And I am so happy to be joined by Miranda Burton. And I will tell you all a little bit more about her in just a moment. But this month is important. It's April. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, as well as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So you see me wearing my teal, got on my little ribbon, got my teal necklace. Sexual assault awareness is very important to me. As most of you know, if you've been following me for a while, I am not only a survivor, but I work as a sexual violence prevention coordinator at a university. I've been doing this work for about 8 years professionally now. I've done it in the community. I used to do it with middle schoolers and high schoolers. I've done some work with elementary school students. Um, but I am so, so excited to be here with Miranda. And we're getting a few people who are joining live. So let's jump
Awesome.
in. So, Miranda, I want to first give a trigger warning to folks. We're talking about child sexual abuse. We're talking about, child abuse in general, sexual assault awareness in general. These topics may cause distress. They may cause discomfort. So, I want to encourage people to take care of themselves, whatever that looks like for you. It's hard to talk about child sexual abuse, but it's so necessary. So, right now, I do want to introduce our amazing guest, Miranda Burton, who I've had the pleasure of knowing since what, 2014 now?
20, I think it's 2013.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
2013.
So it's funny that we had all these technical issues early this morning, like that this has been because I was thinking you were my first virtual interview, like before it was even a COVID, like 2013, you were my first virtual interview. I didn't even know that was a
Wow.
thing back then, you
That's
know?
crazy. Let me tell y'all, I'm a trendsetter. I've been doing this. Just kidding.
Right, right.
But no, this is so important. I have to let y'all know about how amazing Miranda is. So she is the founder and president of a nonprofit organization called Marion's House. And she's been leading this organization for 8 years. And I do want to draw your attention to the bottom of the screen, marionshouse.org. Please visit, please make a donation.
Yes.
Um, Also, she is the vice chairman of the board of directors for a local charter school. She's a parent advocate in Charleston County, South Carolina. She's a previous assistant middle school step team coach. She is a keto health coach. Y'all, she does it all.
Yes.
She's amazing. She was born in Louisiana and stays true to
Yes.
her Cajun culture. She has two godchildren that she keeps very close to her heart. She's a former Coker College, now university graduate. She has
Mhm.
degrees in psychology and an MBA in organizational management. She's a certified Darkness to Light and Parenting Partners facilitator. She has over 12 years experience working with children and families through the school system, community centers, nonprofits, and youth servicing organizations. Y'all, amazing, right? But that's not all. The reason why she's here is because Miranda is a two-time survivor of child sexual abuse by both a male and a female. She states that it is my duty to help in protecting kids from becoming preyed upon and also making adults aware that it is their responsibility to protect a child. Through
Yes.
Marion's house, she gives an ear, empowerment, awareness, and recovery to those that have been or may be impacted by the cycle of child sexual abuse. She has been featured on several online publications, video casts, print magazines, as well as radio shows and ABC News. She has served over 1,000 youth and trained more than 400 adults in prevention of child sexual abuse since 2012.
I just
Miranda.
need you to be the reader. You make it sound a whole lot more than it is.
No, girl, you are amazing work. You are doing excellent work.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
I'm just so happy, so proud to know you. Like,
Back at
people
you
in
for
the
sure.
comments are going crazy. They're saying you're the best. They're saying go Miranda, you're amazing, you rock. And I
Oh,
can
thank you.
co-sign all of that. You are an amazing person. You are doing amazing work. And I am happy that you are here to talk about this subject. This is something people need to talk about more often. So I'm
Let's
glad that
talk
you're
about it.
back. Let's talk about it. So, before we jump into what child sexual abuse is, can you tell us more about the inspiration behind Marion's house?
I'm so glad you said that. Like it today, like it almost just gave me chills because we scheduled this to be on April 10th at 10 a.m. And April 10th, 1942 was actually my grandmother's birthday. So her birthday, Marion Burton, her birthday's today. So I just feel honored to be able to celebrate her life by sharing something that I know that she thought was important, was protecting children constantly. My grandmother was a powerful matriarch in our family. I mean, her to this day being gone is still, it's a hole in the family. Like we know there's definitely a difference not having Marion Burton, but she continued to house pretty much anyone and anybody. I mean, from the elderly to abused children to people addicted to drugs. I remember within my first 3 years of starting Marion's house and having it publicized on Facebook, this lady reached out and she said, I know why you named it Marion's house. She said, I know because I lived at Marion's house. She said, your grandmother let me move in that house, me and my daughter, and I had this drug addiction problem going on, but she believed in me. And because of her, I have been clean for this amount of years. Like, so it's a real life thing. Like my grandmother continued to bring people into her house, no matter the connection that she had with them, because she believed that everybody had an opportunity, to change. So I mean, through the mission of Marion's house, though I am not bringing people into my personal home, I want to bring the story of Marion's house. I want to bring that awareness, that prevention, into the homes of others to hopefully protect somebody else's child. Um, my grandmother, I mean, she was just an amazing woman. And anybody that knows my grandmother would say the same thing. She will protect anybody. So you might have got the rough side if she felt like you were going to cross someone that she cared about. But she was the most loving person, the most humble person I know. I mean, she could walk into a room with someone that was, I mean, on any level of status, and she's greeting them with "Yes, sir," "Yes, ma'am." Like she always treated people like they deserve to be respected. Like she didn't have to know who you were. She was very humble, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm still learning how to be as humble as she is. I mean, she was just such an amazing person. I'm just glad that she's my grandmother and that I was able to name my organization after someone that I know personally that is so wonderful.
And, her legacy is blessing all of us, honestly. Um, and I'm so happy that you're doing this. And I say this all the time. Like this work is needed. So let's talk about child sexual abuse. What
Yeah.
is CSA? What is it?
Well, I mean, it can be so many variations of things. Everyone immediately looks for physical signs of what child sexual abuse is, but sometimes it could be voyeurism. It may be that an adult is around the child and asking to see them or observing them while they're taking off their clothes as a method of getting aroused, or wanting that child to observe them to get aroused. I mean, CSA can be an adult having two children to perform a sexual act in order for their benefit. And then, of course, we know that it could be an older child exerting, of course, sexual encounter on a younger child. But I mean, the most common one, of course, we know is if an adult pursues a child. In my case, it was two adults.
Right. And um, it's interesting to note that in your case, one adult was male, one adult was female. In the
Yes.
media, sometimes people just assume, oh, it's some creepy man touching children,
Yeah.
but it can be anyone of any gender identity.
Yes. And I mean, I don't know how far you want me to go into this part of it, but I just let me know if I'm going too far ahead. But, like my mom, her big thing, my mom was a social worker. So she knew what to look out for. She was constantly, helping children and families in her career, but she missed it with me mainly because after me being sexually abused at 3 years old by a male, her focus was don't let a boy touch you. So in my case, when it was a female, that was close to us because it was my mother's girlfriend at the time in the home, it was completely like overlooked. I didn't know whether it was wrong or not. I was confused because it was instilled in me, don't let a boy touch you. And I knew that, okay, I know what that feels like because I've already experienced that and it was, traumatic. So at a young age, I knew that, okay, that should not happen again. But when it was a woman, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know. I was like, this is someone that is showing me this motherly attention, this nurturing thing, but then they're also doing the stuff that I don't like. So I didn't know how to interpret it. And that's a lot of times where the issue comes in.
Yes. So, I think that's something for parents, caregivers, even folks who work with youth should understand. It
Yeah.
can be anyone. We have to stop buying into this myth that only men commit these crimes against
Right.
children. It's not true. And I think we are starting to see more and more in the news and media where women are being arrested for these crimes, they've been accused of. Recently, I've seen a lot of things about teachers, even.
Yeah.
So we have to be aware and we have to talk to children about, anyone violating their boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, it's important. And I want to give a shout out to your mama because your mama's amazing. And, she's a social worker, she's a pastor. Um,
Yes.
yes, so we have to shout
Shout
her
out to
out.
Miranda Burton.
Yes, yes. So, um, what are some of the warning signs that parents, especially, and even other adults who work with children should look out for when it comes to child sexual abuse?
I think there are a number of sounds, of signs. Of course, the most obvious would be those physical signs where you're seeing bruising, or they're feeling uncomfortable, or they're having problems when they go into the bathroom. But I think the things to pay attention to are when a child changes their emotional or their behavior. If you have a child, and so for me, because I was sexually abused at 3 years old, I don't know who I was prior to. But I've heard like my father say, you were a risk taker, you was jumping fences and doing all these kind of things. And then after being sexually abused, I became more timid. I had fear that I never had. I was a risk taker, but then everything gave me anxiety. So that was like when a young child is having experiencing anxiety, that's a red flag. Or if you have a child that is used to participating in a particular activity, but then they no longer want to participate in that activity. Why don't they want to go over there? What's the problem that's happening at, their auntie's house or at their grandmother's house or like what has changed that now they don't look as happy when they're going into those environments? Or paying attention to a child that was, talkative and social, and now they're wanting to sit in their room and be by themselves. Or you have the reverse. You have the child that now this has happened to them. They're like, well, if my body is going to be, abused in this way, I want to have control over how it's used. And that's when you get into, the teens that begin to sex traffic, right? Because now they're in those situations where they're like, well, at least I'm controlling who touches my body. So then they become more promiscuous. So there's so many different ways that it's about noticing the change. So whether it's they become more or less, it's just being aware of your child, being aware of the children in your community. I can tell you there was an incident where there was a young lady that I worked with, and I remember she was very active in band, right? And then all of a sudden she didn't want to go to band practice anymore that was a red flag to me. So I asked questions. We asked questions, and in the end, it was discovered that there had been an attempted sexual assault incident at band practice. But if none of us would have been observant to notice there was a change and that this is something that she loved when we met her, and now all of a sudden she doesn't want to participate, we wouldn't have known. It's about constantly being vigilant and being observant, noticing when an adult is crossing boundaries, noticing when a child is doing something that is out of their norm behavior. Everybody has their own personal baseline of who they are, right? So when you're seeing a change in that baseline, then you know something is not right.
I'm so happy you pointed out the change in baseline, So, parents, caregivers, folks who work with children, you actually have to get to know the children. You have to pay attention to them, and not just really young children, but teenagers as well. So, I
Yeah.
was a teenager when I was assaulted, and I remember the changes in me, and I remember people picking up on those changes, but not knowing the right questions to ask. And I think they assumed it was like that normal teenage angst. So I love talking on the phone when I was younger. Like, I was a spoiled child. I can admit it. I had my own cell phone in high school, but I also had a phone line in the house because me and my
What?
mama both loved talking on the phone. I went from, using two phones to I wouldn't talk to anyone. I would literally like not talk to anybody. People would call. I'm like, no, I'm not talking today. I turn my cell phone off. My house phone would just ring and ring. And I stopped eating. Like, I would literally come home from school and I wouldn't eat dinner. I would just go straight to my room, stay in my room till morning time. It was time to go back to school. And I remember my mama picking up on that change, but she didn't know what it was because sometimes teens act a little different.
Yeah.
But it's so important to take notice and to ask questions. So, that kind of brings me to the question of, so what are the impacts? I know you talked about some of the warning signs, but how does child sexual abuse and other sexual abuse impact young people?
Oh my goodness, there's so many ways. I mean, a child can, in the end, suffer. Of course, more normal things you hear is like depression, anxiety. They may have body image issues. Um, I can tell you, for me, I struggled with hygiene, feeling like I wasn't clean enough. I couldn't clean myself enough because I felt like it had already been tainted. So I didn't know, like, overbathing. Like, that's something that I have still struggled with. Like that kind of thing. It could be. People may cut themselves, like body harm. They may start using drugs. Alcohol may be what they use in order to cope. I can tell you, I had a very dear friend and I knew that she had been sexually abused. We talked about it. She's cried on my shoulder many times, and she's not with us anymore. It was the drugs that killed her from an overdose, and she tried therapy and several things, but nothing was enough. That her time didn't she didn't make it. So it's so important that we continue to get the help that's needed. And I tell people all the time, I'm at warrior status now, but through this journey, it's a process. Like, I mean, therapy is something that's always going to be relevant. Being able to do the work of Marion's house, that's constantly allowing me to be able to heal. Every time I share my story, I know I'm helping somebody else, which is helping me to grow and continuing to heal. I mean, and then it's important to recognize that, a person, this may be something they carry for the rest of their lives. So if that's the case, you want to keep people in your circle that are sensitive to what you're going through, that are understanding. And if you don't have that, then you need to change your circle, like, because it's gonna impact your mental health.
Definitely. And I'll just, share. I remember after my first assault in high school, I was 16. Um, I assumed my grades would suffer. They didn't. My grades stayed the same, but like my attitude changed because honestly, I was dealing with depression and I didn't know it. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember some of my teachers like pointing out my attitude change. And I had one teacher and I loved her dearly, bless her. But she was like, "You will never get into college with that attitude." And I remember going off on her like in front of the class, and that was not my normal demeanor. I was a very shy, very introverted student. People may have called me a teacher's pet a time or two. I wanted to people please before the assault happened. Afterwards, I didn't care about anybody or anything. And my grades didn't suffer. Like, I ended up getting a full scholarship to go to college, an academic one. And, but I was assaulted again in college. I stopped going to class. So I stopped going to work. I
Mm.
stopped wanting to hang around people. Like, I remember having panic attacks. And eventually I was diagnosed with PTSD. And that was real because I was at school on a scholarship. I needed to go to class. But I
Yeah.
literally called a couple of my professors, like, look, I can't come. I was raped. And they were like, wait, what? And I was
Mm.
like, yeah. And it was crazy, and thankfully they worked with me so that it didn't have such a negative impact on my education. But there are a lot of young people who are struggling with school, and that could be
Yeah.
elementary school, middle school, high school, or college, maybe even grad school, because of sexual assault. Work. I had two jobs in college. I stopped going to both of them after I
Mm.
was assaulted again.
Yeah.
I needed my money, but it was the fear that kept me from going. So, we need to recognize those types of patterns as well. And some people may never be diagnosed with a mental health condition for
Right.
whatever reason, but it doesn't mean that this is not impacting them. I've had
Right.
conversations with young people like, hey, imagine if you were sexually assaulted at a place you like to hang out with your friends. You may not go there anymore because it doesn't feel
Right.
safe. um, you may not even hang around the same friends anymore. I remember withdrawing from my friends and like isolating myself because of what had happened. Especially in my case, because my friends were friends with the person who had abused me
Yeah.
in both instances. So, a lot of things can happen and change. And, I do want to recognize your friend you mentioned who died from drugs. And it's so sad. And
Yeah.
that happens so much. And as everyone know, we lost DMX
Yeah.
yesterday, who
Yeah.
had a very long history of child abuse, and it was
Yes.
Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Yeah.
Um, it's such a sad case
Right.
because people self-medicate in different ways, whether it's drugs,
Food.
overeating,
Yeah.
yeah, or not eating enough,
Yeah.
alcohol, like self-harm, uh being promiscuous, as you said. Some people become hypersexualized because of that. It can show up in so many ways, and that's why it's so important to have organizations like yours, Marion's House, doing this work for prevention, and to have just adults actually paying attention to children and trying to help them. So let me ask you this, Miranda: what does prevention look like?
You know, I had this slogan that I used, and my board members had to correct me and tell me that, you know what, you can't use that because it's going to prevent families that have already experienced it. So I had this slogan of, if you master the prevention, you won't need the recovery. But I had to be checked on that it is very rare to master anything. And how can you guarantee prevention? I mean, my mother was a social worker and she still couldn't prevent it. So it's unrealistic. But what you can do is have as many strategies as possible in hopes that it won't happen, right? So that's something I had to check myself on. Like, I mean, I think that for me, I probably could have had a child long ago, but it was a fear of would I be able to protect them? Like that was something that I struggled with even in my 20s. If I have a child, will I be able to protect them? Do I want to take that risk that something happens to them? Prevention, it's a large thing. It's an everyday thing. It shouldn't be one conversation with your child. It shouldn't be one workshop with a parent. It's a conversation that we should always be talking about it. It should be constantly. I know growing up, you hear parents say, well, you was over there, ain't nobody try to touch you, did they did. That's a good thing. I think it's important to continue to open that door, but it's a tone. So the way I just said that sounds aggressive, right? So if somebody did touch me, it's not going to make me open that door to want to immediately tell, because you know that it must be really negative what just happened. So continuing to make the child feel comfortable about their body, continuing to make the youth or whoever feel comfortable. If they choose to not show affection, it's okay. I give the example all the time about when you go to those family events and your parents are like, you better give them a hug. No, they don't have to do that. when you open that door of forced affection, when they're put in a situation with an adult, and it's again a forced affection that then turns into sexual assault, they're not going to know how to say no. They're not going to feel like anything's wrong because you've taught them and trained them from a young age at 2 and 3 years old that they have to hug you, they have to love on you. So I'm conscious of that when I'm interacting with my friends and their kids. I love kids, but I'm conscious of it, like, oh, like, but I don't force them to give me any form of affection because that should be their choice. So unless they feel like they want to, I don't force it, right? It doesn't make me love them any less. I want to go back to the thing you said about school because I think it's important that, as we talk about kids withdrawing and from school, in my case, one of the things that helped me is I could control my academics. So I've always been this person that cared about learning as much as possible. So when it came to school, I did really well. But during the time that I was being sexually abused, I was getting behavior reports like every day. So my teachers did not pay attention to the fact that this really smart child is acting out every single day. I was going home getting whoopings for behavior, and my abuser was the person that potentially signed my behavior report, and like, because she was the person that was with me when I first got home, that kind of thing. Or when I think about even younger ages, so I was sexually abused at 3 years old, and then I struggled with learning how to read. That was something that was an issue for me. But once I began to realize, if I put my all into academics, this is something I can control. In my mind, I looked at academics as an out. That was my way to get away from the people that have hurt me. It was like, if I excel academically, I can go off to college, I can move away. I can, in my mind, even though I didn't pick a wealthy field, I was like, I'm gonna be rich, live my own life, separate from everybody, and life will be peaceful because it'll be in my control. But that's unrealistic because I got to college, and then when academics no longer was easy for me and it was actually hard, it was a trigger. It was like, this is the one thing I was able to control. Now I'm sitting here, this is the best example of organic chemistry, can't understand why I can't figure this out. Like, that's something that somebody else is like, oh, chemistry's hard, move on. For me, I could not believe that this is a class that I'm taking and I can't figure it out. So it was a trigger for me. So it made me become withdrawn. And then from academics being a trigger, the one thing I could control, then I had my abuser to reach out and call me in college. So all of these things caused me to, in a downward spiral during a time that should have been some of the best years of my life. And so, I had friends that saw me, didn't know what was going on. I had some very close people to me that I don't know if I would have made it through my college years if it was not for them. I saw myself and I look back at who the person that I was then. I have friends that survived with me through those years, and they're like, girl, you've come a long way, because I was angry. I was in a place where I didn't care about my body. I was just in a very bad space because I felt like I did not have the control that I thought I deserved. And I didn't trust anyone. And I think people forget that, once your body has been violated, once the people that are supposed to love and care about you violate your trust, it's very difficult to trust anyone. And you talked about in your case how, you didn't want to hang out with your friends. You didn't want to talk on the phone because they were connected to your abuser. Well, in my life, my first abuser was my aunt's husband, and she stayed married to him. So that means I went to family functions and I was surrounded by my abuser during the holidays, the time that was supposed to be happy, And then, so I had, until finally he was removed when he began to abuse others. But that was like, that didn't happen in that same year. That was years of this man still being a part of our family and everybody functioning like he was a good person. He even came into our own household, and would play pool. And like it was like he was a good person. So, it's very hard for you to then trust other people when you feel like the people that love and care about you didn't think your 3-year-old body was that important.
Wow. Wow, there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
And that whole not trusting people, that resonates with me. That's
Yeah.
still one of my struggles.
Yeah.
Like, although it has been years since I was sexually assaulted, I still struggle to trust people, to let them get close
Yeah.
to me. And as a result, I have really strong boundaries. And, the good thing about that is I'm raising some little kids with really strong boundaries. So I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. My 3-year-old will tell you in a heartbeat, no, don't hug me. No, I don't want to kiss go away, don't touch me. And I'm just like, we respect that, you know. And then there are times like he's really loving, like, I love you, can I give you a hug? And it's like, yes, you know, children need to know they have autonomy over their bodies, they have
Right.
agency over their bodies. And sometimes that's hard for people to understand, but that's a part of that prevention piece. Like, we have to teach our little children that it's okay to say no, you
Yeah.
know. And I know growing up as a millennial, you know, my mid 30s, like I was taught like you do what adults tell you to do.
Right.
You don't say no. Thank God I was never harmed as a young child by an adult.
Yeah.
My abusers were my age, but
Mhm.
still, when you tell young people that, they get in their minds like, okay, I have to agree with this. Adults are right. I have to do what adults say. And that's not safe. And that's a part of that prevention, letting kids know, like, no, you don't have to hug people.
Yeah.
Sometimes my son wants to do a fist bump, and I'm like, cool, you know, some
Yeah.
kids like high fives or elbow bumps now that COVID's around, and
Yeah.
it's okay. You know, you just give people that choice, and
Yeah.
children are people, and they deserve to, you know, say when things are okay and when things are not okay. And
Yeah.
honestly, having conversations like this with young kids, you know, I taught my daughter when she was 2 about, you know, her body is her body. You teach your kids the appropriate names for their body parts,
Yes.
including their genitalia. And you know, I had some family members like, girl, why are you teaching your kids that? And I'm like, because they need to know. They need to know
Exactly.
the correct names if something happens. I want them to be able to articulate it.
Yeah.
And I have a funny story that I'm gonna share about my daughter. She was 2. We were in Harris Teeter grocery store, and she was playing with my keys, and she was sitting there, and she dropped the keys in her lap, and she screamed, "Mommy, the keys touched my vagina." And people were looking, and I was like, those bad keys, they shouldn't have done that. And you know, I kept it normal, but on the
Right.
inside, I was freaking out. I'm like, Lord, this is not how I taught you this. But you know what? She felt comfortable enough to say
Yeah.
it. And like, we used to go over drills, like, okay, if somebody tries to touch you, you don't want them to. What do you say? What do you do? You
Yeah.
kick, you scream. And you know, it worked. And
It
now
does.
I have those conversations with my son because it's really important for people to understand, parents especially. This is not just something that happens to girls. It happens to boys too. It happens to non-binary people. Like, it can happen to anybody. And we need
Yes.
to protect all of our children. And just because your children are older, let's say they're a teenager, it doesn't mean you stop caring about them, because they can still be assaulted or abused by anyone. And
Yeah.
so those conversations can continue, letting people know what consent means. You know, I used to have conversations about consent with my daughter when she started preschool. She was 3. She likes to hug people, and I'm like, you can't hug people just because you want to hug them. You have to ask
Mm-hmm.
permission. And for her, she had to learn a lesson. She tried to hug this little boy in her class, and he pushed her. And she was like, "Mommy, he pushed me. That's bad." And I was like, "What did you do?" And she was like, "I hugged him. Did you ask permission?" She was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, it's not nice to push people, but it's not nice to hug people without permission, too." And we
Right.
had to have that conversation when she was 3, but she understood it, you know. And it's all about talking to your kids continually. As you said, Miranda, you can't have one discussion and let it
Right.
go. You got to keep talking about this stuff because things keep happening, you know. And we work in fields, we're around young people a lot,
Yeah.
so we hear some stories that other people probably could not believe. But that's why it's so important to do something about prevention, to try to prevent it.
Right.
And I would be wrong to leave out other things that help. Like, we can't pretend that just having these one-to-one conversations or small group conversations with parents and or children will, you know, keep every child safe. There are some things on the community level, on the societal level, that we have to tackle as well, like poverty,
Yeah.
people not having jobs,
Yes.
people not having safe places to live. Things
Mm-hmm.
like that can, you know, if we decrease those things, it'll decrease violence as well against young
Yeah.
people. Having a society that just tolerates sexual violence in general
Or
does
sweeping it
not
under the rug.
Sweeping it under the rug, or people get a slap on the wrist when they violate someone, and they actually go through the judicial system.
Mhm.
There are so many rapists, honestly, who never serve time, even if they've been convicted.
Yeah.
And people don't know about that part, but
Yeah.
it's a thing.
So I'll tell you with my story, my male pedophile, it was reported. And he pled guilty, received a lesser sentence, and was not placed in jail, and was then able to go back and return and interact with children, which is why he was then able to molest other children after that. And I tell people all the time, a serial pedophile can have up to 5,000 victims in their lifetime, right? You know why? Because you have people that brush it under the rug, or they do those things where like, oh, but just don't leave your child at Uncle Billy's house, or don't leave your child at Aunt Betty's house. Like, why are these what you do instead of just reporting that person that you know has done something inappropriate? In my life, I've had family members to tell me, "Oh, I'm so glad you're sharing your story because I remember when that person tried to come at me and I didn't say anything." So who knows how many generations this has occurred that no one has chosen to have a voice or to speak up and to really give an ear to what's going on. Um, I think for me, even in sharing my story, I've been shut down so many times. I've had family members to delete and block me. I've had people to say, why you always got to talk about that? Why do you feel the need to keep bringing it up? I mean, if you're healed, move on. But no one understands that this is something that is helping somebody else. There's someone that has never shared their story and never will, but through hearing mine, that's a little bit of healing for them. And that may be the step for them to see, okay, this is somebody that's worked with children and families for 12 years, but she's still struggling. She still goes to therapy herself. Maybe that's the encouragement they need to take a step, to help them or to help their family. You just don't know the impact it may have. And then, I mean, there are times when sometimes hearing someone else's story will bring back the memories and remind a person, wait, I didn't remember that this happened, but now it's brought it to my attention that maybe this happened to me too. I had a friend years ago. I was reading the story to one of their children. And I use these different books like Katie the Caterpillar, Let's Talk About It, Put Up a Red Flag, different children's books to help start the conversation. And I remember that friend saying to me, girl, I think I just realized I was sexually abused. Listen to everything that you say is considered sexual abuse. That's me too. I remember when he used to come in the room and watch me change clothes. And I was so uncomfortable. I didn't know that this was a part of it. So you never know the situation or what a person has gone through. So it's being sensitive for me. I'm sensitive of when I share my story, how I share it, because I don't want to trigger someone into a negative space. But I also want them to understand that it is real. I'm not gonna not make someone uncomfortable. I've had people say, "Well, that's not appropriate." I'll never forget. I had a friend that were very close in the Columbia area, and they wanted me to come and do a book reading at the children's birthday party. And I remember one of the family members said, "Shouldn't y'all be doing pin the tail on the donkey instead of talking about that? That's inappropriate." And I said, "No, what's inappropriate is for a child to be sexually abused or touched. So if you're uncomfortable, that's a red flag to me. You should want your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, these children to learn these things so they can continue to protect themselves. So it doesn't matter where you have the conversation, it needs to be had." And then, I mean, you go into the areas of families where they think that certain things are appropriate to explore each other's bodies with your cousins and stuff like that. That's not appropriate. But a lot of times in families, they do these things and it gets brushed under the rug because they think it's the norm. Or they're concerned about leaving the boy cousin with the girl cousin or leaving the girl cousin, like that kind of thing, when they never consider that what if it's two females? Because once again, like we said in the beginning, females can be pedophiles too. So being conscious of whoever you leave your children with, making sure that you completely look at me and we're people that have trust issues, right? So it's going to be difficult to find someone that we completely trust to even leave a child with. I mean, my friends think I'm crazy. I look at them like, let me see who over there with that child. These aren't even my kids, but I tell people all the time, I do this work for your kids because I don't have children yet. So I'm just trying to protect your kids.
And I love that. And you know what? You brought up some things I just want to touch on. Like, these conversations make people uncomfortable. But what's most uncomfortable is having, children who have been victimized and they have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Um, and I'm the type of person, so I'm still an introvert, but I like talking about things that make people uncomfortable, because when people are uncomfortable, they are forced to grow and they're forced to
Right.
acknowledge some things that, for decades have been swept under the rug. And, because we are on this journey of healing, we are able to help other people, because I too have had folks reach out to me, friends, family members, even strangers. They heard my story, and then I get a DM on Facebook or on Instagram like, you know what, I've been through something similar and I never knew that's what it was. Or when I was working in the community, like, I've had summer camps invite me to do prevention work, and I had a camp counselor tell me one time, she was like, while you were talking to the students, I realized I'm a survivor too. And this thing, there are statistics out there, and I
Yeah.
haven't mentioned them, but there are some statistics that'll say one in four females before they turn 18, and one in six boys before they
Yeah.
turn 18 will be victimized. We don't know those real numbers. I can
Right.
say in my
That's just reported cases.
that's exactly, because I can say in the circle of people I know, the numbers are a lot higher. Because for
Yeah.
one, people didn't even know what sexual abuse was or sexual assault
Right.
was until, they became aware later in life. And, a lot of people are afraid to report for whatever reason, and that's valid. But we have to have these conversations. And I'm so happy that you continue to have these conversations
Yep.
and you continue to do this work. Um, so, my next question for you, Miranda: how should people respond if a young person discloses they have been abused?
The big thing that is important, and it's even something that's taught during the Darkness to Light trainings, during my Let's Talk About It sessions, don't overreact. You do not want that child to feel like what they've said to you is something that's wrong. We know that what's happened to them was not okay, but how you respond will determine if they communicate with you going further, right? So when you gave that response of your child saying the keys touched her vagina, you didn't overreact. So if anything else touched her vagina, right, she's going to feel comfortable telling you. It's the same thing as if a child discloses, they're not going to tell you the full story. They're going to tell you a piece of the story and see how you respond before they tell you the full picture, right? There's a story where, they talk about the little girl that told the school, that daddy ate my cookie or touched my pocketbook, these kind of things. Because parents aren't teaching them the appropriate words when they disclose it, someone else that's in a professional world may not know what they're talking about or how to support them or to help them. So always teach them, of course, the right terminology for their body parts. But if they disclose something that you know is not appropriate, thank them. Thank them for having the courage to even come to you, to disclose you, to feel comfortable even sharing something with you, because they did not have to do that. That is the hardest piece, right? When I was sexually abused by my mother's girlfriend, I didn't know how to tell her that, because this woman was also physically abusing my mother. So how do I then disclose that this has happened to me? This is also after I've been abused by this male who has not left my family. So of course you're not going to feel comfortable disclosing something when you realize that nothing was done in your family with the first person. So then it makes you afraid to say anything the next time. So you want to make sure that your child is comfortable. You want to make sure that any child that they know that some action has been taken, have that conversation with them. I know the doctors told my mom I would never remember. She didn't think I would remember what happened at 3 years old, but I did, and I do. So even though psychologists and doctors, we're trained in certain things, but even with training, there's some things that are missed. Like some kids are smarter than others, and then people fail to realize that yes, the brain does not start developing memory until 3, which is when I was abused. But in my case, if you have a traumatic experience, they don't forget trauma. So they may not know why they feel this way. Like for me, I had issues with going to Circle K gas stations because I know that my female pedophile touched me in a bathroom in a Circle K gas station. For years, I could not go into one until more recent years. Like literally recent years, I've been able to go inside. I would, if there's another gas station across the street, I don't care how cheap the gas was, I would not go to a Circle K gas station. But now that's something I've overcome. And that's after already having Marion's house and finally getting to that point. That took years to get to that space. So it's just important to always be sensitive, to be conscious of who you're dealing with, making the child, the adult, whoever discloses, not just the child, because I've had adult survivors that through sharing my story, have disclosed things to me. I made sure that they felt comfortable, that it's not too late, that there's nothing wrong with the fact that you're 40 years old and you just disclosed this. That's okay. You did it in your timing. You may choose to never disclose, and that's okay. It's about working through that process in whatever way is going to work for you. But most importantly, if a person has the courage to come to you, thank them and praise them and never make them feel guilty for what happened to them because it's not their fault.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And and I'll say this, when it comes to teenagers, especially, um, teens like to tell their friends. They may
Mm-hmm.
not go and tell an authority figure. I was that teenager. I know that from experience twice. I was 16, then I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
Each time I first went to a peer or a friend that I trusted.
Yeah.
And most of those times people did not know how to respond. So
Yeah.
it's so important for young people even to have training on how to be a good friend, how to be a supportive friend. I'm blessed now to do that work to train college students how to respond, but in the past I've trained middle school students and high school students on how to be a good
Yeah.
friend. If their friends tell them, because there's a great chance their friends will tell them before telling anyone else. And I've had some really uncomfortable situations and conversations like, hey, you can't tell your friend they're stupid to go back or to be around
Right.
that person. Like, you got to watch how you respond, because the way you respond will impact them and how they tell other people, and if they even choose to tell someone else to
Right.
get further assistance. um and when I disclosed to my friends, a couple of them did the wrong thing. I'm gonna tell
Mm-hmm.
the truth. I remember one was like, "Oh, that's crazy," and hanged up the phone on me. And I'm like, "Now wait a minute, that's not helpful." And I was just stunned, like, "Wow, I called this person because I trust them a lot." And this is how they responded. Thankfully, in that instance, I kept telling people, because I was just like, listen, this is impacting my life. I'm scared to leave. At that time, I was in college, my room on campus. Like, I need help. And thankfully, I had a great friend who responded by pointing me in the right direction. He acknowledged that he didn't know exactly the right things to say, but he knew of help I could get. And I
Mm-hmm.
say that changed my life. That saved my life, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so we have to be careful the words we use when
Mm-hmm.
responding to disclosures. Be a friend, be a good family member, be a good teacher, coach, whoever you are, godparent, auntie, uncle.
Yeah.
Be a good person. And think, how would you want someone to talk to you if you told them something of this great importance? How would you want
Right.
people to talk to you? Like, don't ask them questions like, so what did you do? I know that comes up a lot for older children and like teenagers. Like, so what did you do to make this happen? Or you didn't try to fight back? That's inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I
I'll tell
really,
you, in both, I remember being a little girl in elementary school, and I told one of my friends, I remember trying to tell a teacher when I was being abused by the female, but I didn't understand what was happening, so I didn't know how to word it. But I remember one of my friends said, "Oh, she's giving you love." Like, so I don't know if that child was being abused too, because she, we're literally, I'm talking about first grade, and I'm talking to my friend on the playground, and she's like, "She's giving you love. That's what they do." Like, so I don't know what was happening to her. I remember being probably around 13 or 14, and I had a best friend, and we were spending the night with each other. And I remember trying to tell her, and I remember saying, "Well, why are you telling me this? What you want me to do?" I remember like that feeling of like, oh, maybe I should stop saying anything. So I'm thankful that when I moved to North Carolina, that I had a circle of friends that never judged me. And Lord, they had a whole lot of stuff to judge because I was crazy. But they never judged me. I might have called me a crybaby, of course, but they never judged me, but they always listened. Even when they did not understand, even if they could not relate, they always sat there and they listened and they supported me. And that's why our friendship will be solid forever, right? Because during some of my darkest times when I didn't feel comfortable talking to anyone else, sometimes your friends are who you have. So I'm thankful that I did not have friends in North Carolina that said the wrong thing. I was definitely grateful for that. But in my younger years, They didn't know what to do or what to say. And that's why another reason when I do the Let's Talk About It session with children, I teach the younger children that when we go over the green flag people, which are the people that you should tell that can help you, if they say, my best friend, my brother, I'll say, well, how old is your brother? Well, how old is your best friend? Because if they're the same age as you, they have the same knowledge potential as you, so they can't help you. And when I'm talking to the teenagers, I always say, I want you to learn this information, not necessarily for you, because your friend may come to you when it happens to them. I have sat in court with people, and I know that the reason that one of the young ladies got the help she needed was because she told her guy friend who told somebody else and got her the adult help that was needed to get out of that situation. So you just never know what, may be the difference. So every time I do a Marion's House workshop or I'm sharing this information, I know that no, your child personally may not need it. But that's why the mission of Marion's House talks about giving an ear to all those that may be impacted by the cycle. Because you may not be the daughter of the person that was abused. You may not be the mother of the child that was abused. You may not be the sibling. You may be two friends away that overheard the conversation, but you knew that maybe I should go get that SRO, that school police officer, to talk to them because something is not, I heard them in the cafeteria say something that was not appropriate, that kind of thing. It's about being that person of support. So get in this knowledge, get in this information. Not only are we giving an ear to child sexual abuse, somewhere out there, there's somebody that's listening that's going to be able to help you.
That is so true. And I remember even in my talks with elementary school students a few years ago and middle school and high school students, I always told them, if the first person does not listen or respond in a helpful way, keep telling people
Yes.
until somebody
Yes.
takes the actions that you need them to take.
Yes.
That's so important.
And ultimately, if you done told everybody call 911. Like when I have those books and I'm reading, I said, if we done went through all these green flag people and none of them are able to help you, the 911 dispatch operator, they're paid to help you. Somebody will help you. There's so many support groups. And in this time of the pandemic, one of the greatest things that has come out of the pandemic is a lot of these virtual support groups. Take advantage of them. I just printed out flyers and put in all the teachers' boxes before spring break because I wanted them to know these resources are available. They may be, this month may be a trigger to them, something they don't want to deal with. But having that resource available and knowing that somebody cares and someone is listening, and that maybe you just want to be in a support group and be silent, but you want to hear someone else. Like right now, there's somebody watching that is not comfortable sharing their story, but because we're comfortable, we're helping them to heal. And that's what it's about.
That is so true. And it's okay to seek help. You talked about going to therapy. I still see my therapist every other week. She's amazing. And I tell people, going to therapy may feel different. You may not even like your first therapist. It's okay
Right.
to fire and find the right one. Get the right person that can provide you with the help that you need, that can help you on your healing journey, because you can heal. You can overcome this. We both have been impacted by this type of abuse, and we are both okay. Like, we are
Yeah.
doing well, we are helping other people, we got jobs and businesses. Like, it's not a life sentence of being stuck
Right.
in the house, being ashamed. Like, we share our story, we do things to help other people. And I'm so happy once again just to know you and to know the work that you're doing,
Well, I'm
Miranda.
thankful for you too. We met on Facebook in from one of those random groups. I think it was like probably 2012, and then we ended up on the same platform together speaking. And it's since 2013. Like I said in the beginning, my first virtual interview was you. You were the one, like you were a trendsetter when people weren't doing this. You were doing it, And I remember like, oh, okay, well, we can do that. I'm scared, but okay, like it was through that like you were present for the first time that I shared my personal story in Greensboro, North Carolina. I had never publicly shared my story out loud. I was doing the work of Marion's House just as a professional that understood the importance of preventing child sexual abuse, of helping people to recover from it. But I had not disclosed my story. So you were present to see like a life transforming event with me and my mom when we were sharing our story together. That was something that had never happened. So, I mean, like you really have been around like through the whole evolution of Marion's House. And I do appreciate you, and thank you for once again giving me another platform to give an ear.
Awesome. Well, thank you for always being willing to show up and to do this work, and to take this little journey and ride with
Yeah.
me through all the little
Yes.
bumps of technology and all that.
We
I'm so
good.
happy. And we have some really good comments. People are sharing,
I
people
keep
are
trying to look
feeling.
over at my phone, but I don't want to look crazy on the screen because I'm looking down at my phone.
Your mom is watching.
I
Um,
see.
hey, Miss Brenda. So yeah, it's great. So to wrap up, Miranda, what words of wisdom would you like to share with the folks who are tuned in, with the folks who will watch the replay? How do you want to leave off?
Two things I want to say. I want to say to parents, don't ever be afraid to start the conversation. Some parents don't want to start for the conversation because they feel like it's too late, because they think it may have already happened, because they think that there is no end. It's a family cycle that they don't understand. It can be broken. Don't be afraid to start the conversation. And if you need help starting the conversation, contact me, contact Sharika. There are books, there are resources that I use. I have a few of them here, that, like Katie the Caterpillar. This is such a simple book that talks about how Katie could not bloom into the butterfly and evolve from out of her cocoon until she disclosed that Uncle Cat had been touching her body. This is such an easy way to start the conversation. I've started this conversation with 3 and 4 year olds. You can start the conversation there. There are books like this one, Please Tell, where it talks about the journey. And this one is powerful to me because it says to my cousin who went through it with me, because I know that I have family members that have also been sexually abused. We have books like this, I Said No, that goes through step by step of what it is to do to put up a red flag. And then I have my children's book that hopefully will be coming out soon. So, I mean, there are tons of resources out there in the community. And right now, if you see me on this live, you have my connection because I'm always available. Contact marionshouse.org. Contact, you can inbox the Marion's House page. Do whatever you need to do to get that support, to book a training. If you are connected to your church community center, there should not be anyone in your organization working with children that has not been trained in how to protect children. And you want to do that because that may be the difference in them and removing that pedophile from your area. So that's my message to parents that are trying to figure out how to protect their kids, to an adult that just wants to be a part of that conversation. Start it. Like, I mean, with my keto coaching, my motto is you can now. As it relates to life, you can now. You can start now. You don't have to wait, in whatever it is. To someone that is trying to survive, my message to you is it's a journey. We gonna continue to survive. Yes, I'm at warrior status, but I still struggle. I still have a whole lot of issues, and we gonna have those. But it's about trying to fight for yourself. And if you don't want to fight for yourself, contact us. We'll fight with you. Because if it's the difference in you not being here anymore, reach out for the help. Get that support. If you don't want to seek a therapist, find a professional friend. A life coach, maybe you may feel differently about a life coach than you would a therapist. If that's the case, do what you got to do to get that help. But don't just let yourself be out there floating alone, because it's not okay. And if you don't have people in your circle that can support you because they don't understand, find somebody that can. Because you can overcome this, you can recover. And yes, it will be a part of your life, but it does not have to consume your life. I had a friend to reality check me last week, and this is as transparent as I can get. She said, Marion's House is not your life. It's the result of your trauma. I said, no, it's my life. It is my, she said, no, no, no. This is just how you've chosen to deal with your trauma. And I couldn't understand that. I was like, what? But she was correct. Like, don't make your trauma your life, but use it as a testament to help someone else or to help you get to the next step in life. Marion's House is just my stepping stone to get where I really need to be. I'm thankful for my grandmother and being able to celebrate her birthday today by educating others on how to protect kids. Because trust and believe, Miranda Burton was trying to protect everybody's kids. She was looking out for the red flags. She saw things that we didn't see. And a lot of times people thought she was crazy when she would say certain things. But every person she thought something was happening to, she was right. So when you have someone that is noticing these signs, be vigilant, do what it takes to protect them. And even if you don't know for sure, but think something is going on, and one of the things we talk about in the training is the good faith report, you can do a wellness check and you will not be penalized. No one can sue you for slander if you are protecting a child. It's a wellness check. So don't be afraid to not say anything or speak up if you think a child's life is in danger. Take those steps to protect that child.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that, Miranda. Thank you, everyone, for joining in and for
Thank you.
watching the replay. Um, next week, don't you have an event next week, Miranda?
I do, and I did not even mention. I'm sorry. Yes, next week, and just we talked about some of the ill effects of child sexual abuse, and people can suffer from anxiety, depression, self harm. Next week's Marion's House workshop is called "Ending the Silence." It is through NAMI, which is the National Association for Mental Health. This workshop will focus on all the aspects of mental health. So, whether you are someone that has experienced mental health issues, whether you have a child that has mental illness, if you are dating someone that has some form of mental illness or has some form of trauma, and they may not know they have mental illness. A lot of times people don't consider anxiety as being mental illness, but it is. A lot of times people think spousal depression is not mental illness, but it is. They're looking at schizophrenia. They're looking at, things that you feel like are bipolar disorder. It may not be that extreme, but it can still be some form of mental trauma. So if you're able to attend this training, this is free, y'all. I'm offering this training free through NAMI. We're partnering together next Saturday. It would be from 11 to 12:30. We're going to do a parent refresh on part of that. We're going to go over strategies to help the parent to learn, our adults to learn how to deal with their distress. But we're also going to educate on mental illness. And I'm going to share a snippet of my story because I want people to understand some of the mental illness piece that I have dealt with, because I think it's important to disclose that as we're going over some of the strategies and tips. So if you're able to join that, I will of course share that event on the Marion's House page. It's posted on marion'shouse.org under the events. You need to register. So you need to click on that link to register to that Zoom in order to receive the Zoom information. I did not create the Zoom, so I can't just send you the info. You have to register in order to get access to the Zoom information, because we do not want to be Zoom bombed with any craziness while we're trying to do something that is of importance to help the community during Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Sexual Abuse, Child Abuse, all that month. We want to educate you all. I always do Darkness to Light. I will be offering a Darkness to Light training at the end of the month on April 28th. So if you would like information about that as well, reach out to me to get that Zoom information. But next week, April 17th from 11 to 12:30, we will have a mental health workshop. Please join us. Educate yourself, get this information. Your teenagers, we made sure this is going to be an age appropriate workshop. So pretty much anyone from the ages of 11 and up is welcome to join this. Probably 10 and up is fine. We know there's some kids in sixth grade that may be 10 years old. And we have already done these trainings within the school system as well. So definitely join if you can. But like I said, you have to register in advance. Go to the marion'shouse.org, click on the Zoom link, or go to the event link on Facebook and click on the Zoom link. I think there were some issues with getting the Zoom link on the website, but you can definitely click from the event page, Ending the Silence, find it, please attend. Great knowledge, great information. I think the most important thing is people lack of a desire to get educated on things that are important. Please join. This is going to be very important to learn strategies and what to be aware of. You never know who may be experiencing mental illness that's right next to you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
Also,
you.
next Saturday, the 17th of April, I will be hosting another live event. Next week is Black Maternal Health Week. So, another issue that's very close to my heart. I tell people I got a whole bunch of stories inside of me. And so, some things
Yeah.
resonate. So, I will be joined by Dr. Carrie Claudia Allen to talk about Black maternal health and how important it is next Saturday. So, if you
Awesome.
have time before Miranda's workshop with NAMI at 10 o'clock, join me live. It will broadcast on the Family Strategist LLC Facebook page and the Life Coach Sharika Dunstan page. But thank you
Awesome.
all for joining us. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you
Yes.
for your wonderful comments. I will go back and respond after this is over. Thank you
Yes.
again, Miranda, for all the work you do with Marion's House. And I will end by saying this: make a donation today so that Miranda can continue her great work to
Thank you.
spread this prevention and awareness about child sexual abuse. We need it. Go to marionshouse.org.
And just
I
click
hope
the
you all,
donate button.
yes, click donate. Do it today. Make your donation.
Yes. Remember,
Um,
you can now.
yes, yes, you can now. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Miranda, for being a
Thank you for
light.
having me and joining me in celebrating the life of my grandmother today.
Yes, and happy birthday to the
Happy
late
birthday.
Marion Burton.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
Bye, guys.